Good afternoon, students, and thank you for joining us today for our DOPL licensing presentation. On behalf of the College of Social Work, I would like to welcome you and introduce our speaker, Brian Pedersen. He is the Bureau Manager at the Department of Professional Licensing, Utah Division of Professional Licensing, my apologies. He has been at DOPL, which is the abbreviation, for 8 years and serving his current position since August. Brian has his bachelor's degree in English from here at the U, and he credits that degree for shaping much of his worldview. He grew up in Sandy, Utah, and loves spending his free time skiing and enjoying the beautiful Utah outdoors. So, without further delay, because we do have a very small window, I'm going to turn the time over to Brian. He will present, and then we will do, approximately a 30, maybe a little bit less Q&A at the conclusion of his presentation. Thank you, and welcome, Brian.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you all today. Like Emily mentioned, I'm Brian from the Division of Professional Licensing. We are a division within the Department of Commerce that regulates all occupations and professions in the state. This is everything from contractors to hunting guides to mental health therapists that my team handles. These are social workers, marriage and family therapists, psychologists, etc. So I wanted to take some time today to kind of go over the basic licensure procedures and what you all can expect after graduation when you apply for your certified social worker licenses and you work on your hours towards your LCSW. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick. There we go. It's interesting not seeing all of your guys' faces. There's a lot of folks, but it's always kind of weird, these online presentations where it feels like I'm kind of talking into the void a little bit. But I'm going to try to keep things around 30 minutes to keep plenty of time for Q&A because there have been a lot of changes that have occurred with the profession over the past couple of years. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to answer those. Okay. So this first slide is just a kind of broad overview of what you can expect as you're working towards your LCSW. So once you graduate, you'll apply for your certified social worker license on our website. From when you graduate, there is a 60-day exemption window here that allows you to continue practicing in the field under supervision while you're waiting for your degree to be conferred and you're waiting to get your certified social worker license. This is a little window where, as long as you're continuing to work under appropriate supervision, you can operate for this time while you're waiting to get everything settled. Once you do have your certified social worker license, you'll need to submit a supervisor association form because all of your supervisors need to be approved by the division in order to count your hours. And I'll go over all of these things in a little bit more detail. Once your supervisor's been approved, then you'll just work in the field. You'll continually review your professional ethics, any licensing laws, and complete your continuing education to keep up active on your license. And then once you've completed your hours, you can register and sit for the ASWB clinical exam, which is kind of the final step towards the LCSW. Once you've got that, then you're good to apply for the L. You need to have a master's degree in social work from a CSWE accredited program. As graduates from the University of Utah, you don't need to worry about this. You're good to go. The official transcript that's required for licensure needs to come directly from your university, which means you need to order it from the registrar's office to be sent directly to our office, either directly to our email address or to our PO box. It needs to come directly from them in order to be considered official. And it does need to show that your degree has been conferred on the transcript as well. This shows that it's actually been awarded. This sometimes can take a week or two after graduation for the university to have this reflected on the transcript. So it may be valuable to reach out to them and make sure that that's reflected on there before you order it. This is some language that just goes over the 60-day exemption. As I mentioned, from the day that you graduate, you have a 60-day window where you can continue to work in the field under supervision while you're waiting to get your certified social worker license. Hours accrued during this time, unfortunately, don't count towards the LCSW. In order to count your hours, you first need to be licensed and you need to have your supervisor approved by the division. You need to be entered into a specific contract with them that outlines that they'll meet all the duties and responsibilities for supervision. And I'll go over that in a little while as well. Something that is going to be coming in the future, which you may be aware of, is the Social Work Compact. This has been in the works for a long time. On this map here, you can see the states that have opted to be in the compact. And what the compact is it'll allow more versatility for you to work in other states with your Utah license. You will have a home state where you're licensed, and then you'll be able to register to practice in these other states without needing to be licensed there individually. Right now, the way that things work is every state has their own licensure process. They all have their own laws and rules. So if you're a Utah CSW that wants to work in California, you have to apply for a California license and you have to maintain that license in order to provide services in California. So if you're someone who's looking to practice in many states, it can be kind of a challenge juggling all of those different licenses, keeping up with continuing education for each state. And the compact will make that a little bit easier. I don't have a due date right now on when the compact is going to be finalized. We're hoping within the next couple of years. When it is finalized, you'll be able to find information on our website on how to register for that. This is what our website looks like. I'll have links where you can access all of this at the end. It's also listed there. It's commerce.utah.gov /DOPL /social work. Here you can find exam information, how to register for the exam, information on how to renew your license. The section that's selected here is licensing, where you'll go to actually submit your application online for initial licensure. There's a laws and rules section here where you can review the mental health statute and rule that kind of goes over all the regulations pertaining to the profession. There's a board information tab. So here at the division, we have a behavioral health board that's comprised of many different mental health therapists, and they are professionals in the field. They don't work for the division, but they're professionals like you who have volunteered their time to assist the division for issues that are a bit beyond the scope of our expertise. So they help us decide things with regards to unique education circumstances, probation and compliance issues, issues with backgrounds. There's a whole bunch of things that they assist us with. The board meets every Thursday at the beginning of the month, and they are open and public meetings, which I would encourage you all to attend, because a lot of times they are discussing specific things that have an immediate impact on your profession. They also have a public comment section as part of their meeting where you can bring your concerns to the board and they can address those things, usually not within the same meeting, but they can put it on their agenda for the future to discuss. Underneath the board, they have a few committees that report directly to them as well. Under related information, you can find some links to like the Utah Association of Social Workers and the National Association of Social Workers. The criminal history tab underneath that has information about criminal history, which I'll go over a little bit more later. There's a section for internationally trained applicants for people whose education was outside of the country, probably not applicable to this group. A frequently asked questions tab, and then of course a place with our contact information. So the criminal history guidelines that I just mentioned, This is a section where if you happen to have any criminal history that you fear may prevent you from licensure, this is the section that you'll want to review. Here we have some guidelines on what specific charges would encounter particular issues with licensure. You'll see them listed here, like there's an abuse charge, there's an animal cruelty, there's an alcohol restricted driver, and on the right there, it gives you a specific time frame on the charge. So with the animal cruelty there, if it was a charge that was within 0 to 12 months, that would require further review by our division. But if the charge was within 13 to 48 months, you'll see there that it lists issue, which means that it wouldn't cause any particular problems or prevent you from being licensed. These guidelines only refer to a specific singular charge. So if there's a pattern of criminal history, that is subject to further review. As part of your application, when you apply, you are expected to disclose any criminal history. We ask that you disclose information about any and all misdemeanors within the past 10 years, as well as any and all felony charges. It's also a new requirement now that just began the beginning of this year that all mental health therapists need to submit fingerprint cards with their application for a full background check. Once you submit your application online, we will send you instructions within a day or two on where you can go to get those fingerprint cards live scanned and sent directly to our office. There's a specific authorization form that you'll need in order to have those done that comes directly to us. So I wouldn't go out and get them done prior to submitting your application. If you're in a situation where you're outside of the state for whatever reason and you can't go to one of our approved live scan vendors, then you would need to have physical fingerprint cards completed and sent directly to our office along with your application. There's not a single charge that would definitively prevent someone from getting a license. Everything is reviewed on an individual basis. If you want to know for certain whether or not a charge would prevent you from being licensed, we do have an application for criminal history determination. That's linked right below these guidelines. And essentially what this is it's an application that you can submit to our office before you apply for your professional license to determine if your criminal charges would prevent you from licensure. If you're at a point now where you're graduating in your university, you're kind of past that point as you've already invested a lot of time and education into going this route, but that is still available, just so you know. Okay, went over this already. Fingerprint cards, they do need to be submitted by an approved vendor, and we will send you that approval form once you submit your application. And we'll hold on to your application until we have them. So this here is a copy of a notice of incomplete application letter. So when you submit your application to our office, if there's anything that's missing from the application, we will email you a letter that looks like this, and it will outline the specific things that we need before we can issue your license. This isn't a denial letter, it's a conditional denial letter, meaning that if the items in this letter are not submitted to our office by the identified deadline, then the application will be denied and you will need to reapply in the future. Most of our correspondence is over email, so you'll want to make sure that you use the best email, personal email with your application so that we can contact you if we need anything. But if everything is good with your application, then you'll receive your license by email within a couple of days. This is what it looks like. It comes with a large copy that you can print off and display in your office. And it also comes with a small wallet sized. Has your name, has your license number. So once you are licensed and you have your certified social worker, license, the next step is to submit a supervisor verification form. It's very important that you submit this form for every one of your approved supervisors. You can have multiple supervisors. You don't need to work at the same place as your supervisor, but you need to be entered into a specific contract with each one of them that outlines specific requirements that will be in place in the supervision. The contract is separate from this form. Once the contract is signed by you and your supervisor, then you'll fill out this association form and submit it to our office. It'll have your information, their information. It will include the date that your contract was signed. And I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of small here, but at the bottom, there's also a place for an approved license observer. This is a new thing that was added just last year, where your approved supervisor can assign an observer to essentially step in at times when they're unavailable and provide supervision for you. The observer doesn't need to be entered into a contract with you, unlike the approved supervisor, but it provides you a little bit of leniency in situations where your supervisor is unavailable. They can also sign off on your professional hours so long as they were approved prior with this form. They just need to be a fully licensed mental health therapist that you've been working with and is available to provide that supervision. The form should be sent directly to our email address that's listed there. Once it's been reviewed and approved, we will send you a verification within a day or two, letting you know that that has been approved and everything is good to go. A lot of question that we get asked is, can I not work at all until my supervisor has been approved? And that's not the case. If you've got your contract in place with your supervisor, you can begin working. And then once you submit your supervisor verification form, we will date the hours that will begin accruing once the contract was in place. We'll be going off the contract date that's submitted on the form. So clinical supervision, these are the hours that you need to have for your LCSW. They include 1,200 hours of direct client care. This is specifically the practice of mental health therapy that includes things like assessments and diagnosis and testing. This is the direct one-on-one therapy with your clients. You need to have 1,200 total hours, and you will need to have 100 hours of direct clinical supervision. This is you sitting down with your supervisor on a regular basis to discuss your caseload. Typically, if you're working a full-time caseload, we want to see you meeting with your supervisor at least once a week. If you're working part-time, then we'll accept supervision hours kind of in proportion to your caseload. But typically, we don't want to see less than perhaps once or twice a month meeting with your supervisor. As part of the 100 hours of direct clinical supervision, you also need to have 25 hours of direct observation. This is your supervisor sitting in on your direct client care and observing the work that you're doing. They can be sitting in as part of a live session, or they can review a recorded session and discuss it with you afterwards. You'll just want to make sure that if you are recording any of your sessions that you are doing so, you're following all HIPAA compliance and consent when you do that. The last part here mentions group supervision. Group supervision can also be counted towards the 100 hours of total supervision, but just be aware that you cannot count no more than 25 hours of group supervision towards the total 100. So for the overall qualifying experience, there's two different routes that you can go. You can complete a total of 3,000 hours completed within a reasonable time frame, which is typically about 16 to 18 months. 18 months is 3,000 hours of full-time work. You are allowed to work overtime if you'd like, but just be aware that if any 3,000 hours that is attested to in less than 16 months would probably be subject to further review. We'd probably request supervision logs and explanations from you and your supervisor outlining how you were able to complete those hours in a short time frame. The alternative to the 3,000 hours is to simply work as a CSW license in the field for 2 years. If you have been licensed and working as a CSW for 2 years, all you need to demonstrate are these total 1,200 hours with the 100 hours of supervision and 25-hour direct observation. We are not going to bother with the other indirect work that would fall within the remaining 3,000 hours of the first route. A question that we often get with the 3,000 hours is what counts towards indirect experience. And unfortunately, in our laws and rules, we don't have specific items that detail what these things are. Essentially, what it is it's indirect work that is directly supporting your therapeutic practice, the day-to-day responsibilities of your job that don't technically fall within the strict definitions of mental health therapy. These are the things that count towards the indirect experience. It's kind of broad, and it's kind of up to your supervisor to determine what those things are. But a couple of things that I'll say about this is that this is not broad social work experience that we're referring to. It needs to be related to clinical work if it itself is not directly clinical. One issue that we've had in the past is people working a couple of different jobs, one where they're doing clinical work, the other where they're doing just sort of like case management work, like at DCFS, and they're trying to gather their indirect experience at another location. And unfortunately, we can't count those hours towards the indirect. All of the work that you do as a CSW needs to be clinical in focus if you want to become a licensed clinical social worker. So those indirect hours need to be supportive of that. Social work is a very broad field, as you all know, and there's lots of different specialties. There's lots of different areas of expertise. There's school social workers. There's social workers that work at DCFS, social service workers, people that work in entry-level behavioral health kind of tech and coach positions. And I really need to emphasize that for our license here at the division, it is a clinical license. And so the work that you need to be doing needs to have that clinical framework. So this is the form that you and your supervisor will use to record your hours. It's called the CSW Record of Clinical Supervision. It's part of the LCSW application, and you can also find it on our website. Here you'll list the direct client care, your supervision, and also your direct observation hours. This should be filled out once you've completed all of your hours under a particular supervisor. We don't have specific forms to track your hours as you go. You can keep track of those however you'd like. Most folks will use like an Excel spreadsheet. I would recommend keeping very good logs. In the situation where you do need to demonstrate your hours, we may request them. But otherwise, all we need with your LCSW application is this particular form that shows the total hours that you accrued under your supervisor. If for some reason you're leaving your supervisor and going to work at another location, you'll want to make sure that your current supervisor fills out this form before you leave and get another job, and you'll want to hold on to it until you're ready to apply for your LCSW and submit it at that time. You won't want to submit any of these forms to us until you've completed all of the requirements for licensure, and you can submit everything all at once. Because unfortunately, we don't house them or review them for you as you're going along. So this is an important topic that I wanted to bring up that's kind of new to this field of social work. Last year, there were a lot of legislative changes that impacted school social workers and what they're allowed to provide in a school setting. Definitions were changed regarding mental health services and therapy to make them considered restrictive services in a school that placed new limitations on how those services can be offered. As a result of this, many school districts have moved away from offering mental health therapy as part of school counseling. The Utah Board of Education has their own school social worker license with its own scope of practice, which is outlined here. You can see those counseling services compared to the mental health services, which is really the purview of the CSW and the LCSW. Some school districts are still providing mental health services and therapy, but if you're looking to work in the school district, you'll want to make absolutely sure that as part of your job description, that you are getting experience in the full scope of mental health services and therapy. And this includes gaining experience in all of the things that are listed there: assessment and evaluation, diagnosis, treatment planning, individual therapy. Um, One of the issues that we've encountered with school social workers in the past is that they are doing some of these things, but they aren't doing all of these things. Many school districts will not offer like a formal diagnosis. Uh, and that's something that as a clinical social worker, you need to have that experience delivering those formal diagnoses if you want to count your experience towards the LCSW. So something to just consider and keep in mind. Supervisor qualifications. There's going to be some big changes coming to supervisors in the future. So it's something that you'll want to keep aware of later down the road if you ever want to become supervisors yourselves. Right now, the requirements to supervise is to be fully licensed as an LCSW for at least 2 years and to be entered into a contract with your supervisor. But beginning January 1st of 2027, all supervisors will need to have completed a 20-hour supervisor training course in order to be a supervisor. We're still working on the rule that's going to polish up all of the requirements for that training. But when it's available, it will be updated on our website. So you'll want to just keep your eye out for those additional changes in the future if you're looking to be a supervisor yourself. Here on our website is the section where you can find the laws and rules. There's quite a few of them, but the Mental Health Professional Practice Act 58-60 and the Rule R156-60E that are highlighted there are the primary sections of the law that you'll want to focus on and review periodically and keep up on any changes when it comes to your profession. These are the things that outline the requirements for the contract. They define your scope of practice, what you can and cannot do as a licensed clinical social worker. They go over your duties and responsibilities as a supervised individual, and they also reference the ethical guidelines that you're supposed to follow. Here at the division, we can help you navigate the rules the best that we can if you have a specific question about them. Unfortunately, we don't have lawyers or attorneys that can legally interpret the law for you. But if you do have any legal questions, you can call us and we can try to direct you as best we can. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but know as a CSW that you need to complete continuing education every 2 years. The renewal cycle for all social workers is September 30th of all even years, and you'll need to complete 40 hours of continuing education by that time. Of those 40 hours, you need to have 6 hours in ethics, and you need to have 2 hours in suicide prevention. Now, for your first renewal, it'll be a little different because you most likely won't be licensed for those full 2 years, in which case you'll need to complete a prorated amount of continuing education. And the way that it works out is you can just take the 40 hours and you can divide it by the number of months that you're licensed for your first renewal cycle. It comes out to about 1.6 hours for each month that you're licensed. This is kind of a little formula here to help you kind of figure out what you need to complete for that first renewal cycle. It's a little confusing, but I wouldn't sweat it too much. And if you have any questions about it, you can always feel free to contact our office and we can help you figure out how many hours that you'll need to complete for your first renewal cycle. For continuing education, they'll provide you a certificate that states the date of the course and how many CEUs were awarded. You'll want to hold on to this information. It's not required that you submit it at renewal time, but in the situation that you're audited, you will need to submit those to our office. This is just the section of the mental health rule that outlines the requirements for continuing education. It's determined by your the degree that you have now rather than the classification of your license. So CSWs used to have to take 20 hours, but now it's been up to 40 to match the LCSW as well. Of the 40 hours, you can count up to 10 hours of asynchronous distant learning courses. These are online courses that are self-paced, that aren't live. The other 30 need to be either in person or they need to be conducted via a live interactive webinar. Anything that's taken online that is live, you're attending live, you can ask questions, that's considered in person. Ethics. If you have any questions regarding ethics, the best place to go is to review the laws and rules that I referenced to ask your agency or a private attorney if you have any ethical questions. You can also reach out to your local association, the NASW or the Utah Association of Social Workers. You can seek assistance from your supervisor or a colleague, or kind of as a last resort, you can call the division. As I mentioned, we aren't lawyers or attorneys, and we don't really have the training to help you navigate complicated ethical situations, but we can point you to the ethical codes in our laws and rules. The complaint process I'd like to go over just briefly here. So the division has the way that we regulate professionals in the field is that we have to respond to complaints that our office receives. Any individual can file a complaint on our website if they suspect that a professional has acted unprofessionally, unethically, or even in a way that is illegal. And our investigation team will look into the matter and determine if any action needs to be taken by our office. Complaints are filed entirely anonymously, although our investigator will reach out to you for more information. So as part of the process, you do need to include your contact information, but that is never made public to anyone. So once a complaint is received, the investigator reach out to you for more information. We conduct a formal investigation into the matter and determine if any action needs to be taken. There are different levels of disciplinary action that we can take against a license holder. Everything from a letter of concern, a verbal warning, to a citation with a fine, maybe requiring additional continuing education. And then as we start to see more severe abuses, we have the option of putting people on probation. And we also have the option of revoking individuals' licenses as well. And I'll just state on this real quick. One of the biggest violations that we have here at the division comes down to really boundaries and dual relationships. Those are the two things that we deal with most often when it comes to mental health therapy. So I can't stress enough the importance that you have good boundaries set with your clients at the beginning of your therapy, and that you maintain those good boundaries throughout, because even tiny things where those boundaries are not met can escalate and snowball into much larger problems that get out of control. And I've seen very good therapists and I've seen very bad therapists find themselves in really terrible situations that all began with the inability to construct those appropriate professional boundaries. So this Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation created the UPHP here at the division. What it is it's an alternative to probation for individuals in the field who are struggling with substance use issues themselves. A lot of times, Utah professionals find themselves in situations where they're having problems with their own mental health. They're struggling with alcohol abuse and things like that. But they're a little bit worried about being open and transparent about those problems because they fear the impact that it might have on their professional license. And so what this is it's a helpline that's been set up through the division to assist professionals with those issues in a way that's confident and that protects them in their profession, and they don't need to worry about those negative impacts. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're struggling with your own mental health and you need assistance, please visit the UPHP. The website's listed there, and there's also a phone number. We want to encourage mental health professionals to also take care of their own mental health without having to worry about the impact that it has on their professional license. So just to kind of summarize, key takeaways here. Once you graduate and you have your official transcript, then you'll submit your application for the CSW, have your transcript submitted to our office. Once that's in place, you'll want to submit that supervisor association form to have your supervisor approved. And at that point, you can begin working on your hours towards full licensure, keep up on any professional ethics, take and pass the ASWB clinical exam, and then you can apply for your full LCSW licensure. And that's kind of the end of the presentation there. Here's some contact information. You can always reach out to me or my team at any time. I'm sure that there are a ton of questions, so I'd like to answer as many of those as we can in the remaining time that we have.
Thank you very much, Brian. That was very informative. And yes, we do. We have several questions. So we will go through the questions, but I do have one clarifying thing while I have the mic here. Um, the 60-day courtesy bridge, the exemption, when does that start? Is it the last day of classes?
It would be the last day of class. Yep.
All right, so students, that's April 21st. So that's when the clock starts ticking on that 60-day countdown. All right, let's go to the questions.
There were
Okay.
also some questions that were shared with me prior. I'd like to kind of go
Oh,
over
okay,
them as
perfect.
well.
Do you want to start
Um,
with those?
Sure, let's start with those,
Okay.
just some basic ones. So the first group of questions that I received from y'all were regarding licensure pathways for undocumented individuals, and whether or not you need to hold a social security card in order to become licensed in the state. You actually do not need to hold a social security card license to hold a professional license. We do have alternatives for you. If you do not have a social security card, then you need to have an alien registration number, you need to have an I-9 number, or we can also license you if you can provide us with an official passport from the country of your origin and a letter from a Utah employer with their intent to hire you. So those are the options that you have if you don't have a social security number. Another question here, does holding a professional license mean someone is legally employable? No, a professional license doesn't grant that legal authority. Can you accrue hours if you are not a W-2 employee? Yes, it is no longer required that you need to be a W-2 employee of a mental health agency. You can work as a 1099 contractor. However, volunteer work can't be counted towards licensure. You do need to be paid for the work that you're doing. Then there were some other questions about the examination. Utah no longer requires the ASWB master's exam for the certified social worker license, so you do not need to take that exam. Many other states still require this exam, however. So if you're planning on working in another state as an associate level social worker working under supervision, you may wish to sit for that master's level exam because the other states may require it. You can still take the exam, even though it's not required here in Utah. Anyone can register for that at any time. And I will also mention that Utah is kind of unique in that we have created an alternative exam pathway for the LCSW clinical, ASWB clinical exam. There's specific requirements for that outlined on our website. But essentially, if you're someone who struggles with taking exams, you do have the option of completing additional experience in lieu of the examination. There are very strict requirements for that alternative route, however, so you want to make sure that you follow the instructions carefully. You need to have taken and failed the ASWB clinical exam at least once. There is a specific supervisor approval form that you need to submit to our office before you can begin accruing those additional hours to make up the exam. And you need to have 500 hours of additional direct client therapy in order to go that alternative path. And it needs to be documented very well. And then at the end of those hours, you also need to provide a couple of letters of recommendation from your specifically approved supervisor and another clinician who's familiar with your work. Those recommendation letters have very specific requirements that need to be outlined in them. So you'll want to make sure that you're following them very closely. Um, Not taking or passing one of the exams could definitely affect your eligibility for the social work compact as well. Individuals who go the alternative exam pathway here in Utah, their license is kind of locked into Utah. It's not going to be transferable to other states, and it's not going to be eligible for the compact when it's in place. A few questions here about supervision. Can a CSW have more than one supervisor at different sites? Yes, you can have as many supervisors as you like. Let's see. Can supervisors charge for supervision? This one's a little tricky. Technically, they can. However, a supervised individual cannot pay their supervisor directly for those services. The reason for that is part of your contract with your supervisor states that you have to maintain a relationship with them where the supervisor is not beholden to you in any way. And directly paying your own supervisor has been viewed as a conflict of that relationship. Oh, what happens if supervision begins before paperwork is approved? Like I said, so long as you've got a contract in place, that is fine. I just encourage you to submit that paperwork as soon as you can, because that's the way that our division reviews the information to ensure that everything is squared away. Because what you don't want is to enter into a contract with a supervisor and then find out several months later that your supervisor didn't actually meet the qualifications to supervise you, and then your hours would be discounted. So that's why it's very important that you submit that information. Let's see here. There were some questions about direct observation. I hope I answered those. Like I said, they can be live or they can be recordings so long as they're HIPAA compliant. There was a question about who is allowed to conduct direct observation. So this would be between you and your approved supervisor or any of those direct observers that have been approved by your supervisor. It was asked, when should new graduates start accruing direct observation hours? Those can be you can start accruing them at any time once your supervisor has been approved. Let's see, clinical hours. There were some questions about remote practice. If licensed in Utah, can someone provide telehealth services while living elsewhere? Yes. Utah allows for telehealth services. So long as you maintain your Utah license, you can provide telehealth services from any location. You can also receive supervision entirely remotely as well. So it is possible to be living in another state, even in another country, even though it's rare, and gather your hours providing telehealth services to clients here in Utah. Let's see. Does licensure depend on the provider's location or the client's location? It depends on the client's location. So where your client is physically located determines the regulating jurisdiction that you need to be licensed in. So if your client is physically located in California, you need to hold a California license in order to provide services to them. Residency doesn't matter, it's where they are physically located. Let's see. There were questions about, do supervised hours expire if someone takes time off? No, they don't. Your hours don't expire. And as a CSW, you can renew that license indefinitely, and you can take as long as you need to complete the hours. Is there a deadline for completing supervision hours? No. Is there a risk in delaying the CSW application after graduation? No. Your degree doesn't expire. You can apply anytime after. Although we have had some situations with our board where they have requested continuing education from folks that enter into the field 10, 20 years after their degree, when, the DSM has changed, ethics has changed, and so sometimes a refresher may be required in those situations. And then just a few administrative questions. What is the CSW application fee? It is $152. Let's see. Do CE hours transfer between license levels? This is a good question. The answer is not quite, but that's where that prorated amount comes in. So as you're a CSW, you're required to complete those 40 hours. Once your LCSW license is active, you're still required to complete those 40 hours every 2 years, but the cycle kind of begins over with a new prorated amount. So kind of technically yes, in a weird way, so long as you're just maintaining the appropriate hours that you need. And then let's see, one last administrative question here. Why is keeping contact information updated so important? Because this is the primary way that the division will contact you if there are any issues with your license. It's also important that while you're working in the field that you are operating under your full legal name as it's reflected on your license. Because if your clients or the public need to verify your license information on our website, they need to have that accurate information so that they can pull you up. Okay, that was quick kind of blow through of uh, those questions. So let's get to the
Great.
ones online.
Right, and I think you have answered some of the questions that are either in the chat or on the Q&A, and I'm sort of toggling back and forth and trying to discern which ones we have not already responded to. So here's one. Does the compact, the licensure compact, apply to the CSW or only to the LCSW?
Um, I believe that it will only apply to the LCSW at this time.
Okay. And again, students, that's a couple of years out, so I
Yeah.
guess stay tuned on that one, right, Brian?
Yep, we're
Okay,
kind of in the same position. We don't have all the answers yet to the compact questions, but we'll make them available as soon as we do.
very good. A question about splitting time. You responded to that. You can split time. Just make sure that everyone is contracted as a supervisor and they're signing off on your form when you do apply for your license. Is that
Yep,
correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Let's see. I think, again, multiple supervisors, you just aggregate your hours between the different places, make sure they're all supervisors that have a contract in place. Let's see. Uh, how soon after graduation can we submit our applications?
You can submit them whenever you'd like. When we receive an application, we have 30 days to resolve any missing information. Typically, that's more than enough time for the university to get that transcript to us. But yeah, you want to make sure that mostly everything is in place before you submit your application. And if you have a supervisor association form that's ready to go, you can submit that with your application as well, rather than submit that separately. That saves a lot of time.
And just so students know, grades are due May 4th, and it will take a few weeks for the registrar to formalize your transcript. So it will probably be a few weeks after May 4th. I think Inca put information in the chat related to that. So is if they have an incomplete application over a certain period of time, does it become inactive and they have to reapply, Brian?
Yeah, so as I kind of talked about with the letter that we send, so when we receive an application, if something is missing, we will send you a letter that gives you 30 days to respond to it. After those 30 days, if we haven't gotten a response, the application will be denied, and then you would need to submit a new application.
Okay.
And you want to try to at least respond and work with us, even if it turns out you haven't met the requirements and you need to withdraw your application. It's important that we get that resolved because you don't want a denied application reflected in your history. Because if you were to become licensed in any other state, you would need to disclose that every single time and explain why you were denied here in Utah, even if it's something as simple as you'd never responded to our letter.
Okay. To qualify for LCSW with the second route, in parentheses, working for 2 years, would that be possible to complete with working full-time or taking maternity leave for a couple of months while working 20 to 25 hours a week?
Um, yeah, theoretically it would be. Because in that route, all that we're really concerned about is that you've completed those 1,200 hours. Um, so long as we see that you've got those, then you'll be good to go. And there isn't a specific time frame on when those things, well, other than the 2 years.
Okay. How do things work with school social work? Do one-on-one counseling work with students count for hours toward licensing?
If the counseling that you're providing is actual mental health therapy, the way that it's defined in the statute, and this is something that you'll want to review if you're looking to get into the school district, because they do provide counseling services, but counseling has kind of become a very broad thing that doesn't always include clinical work. It doesn't provide diagnosing mental illness as it's defined medically in the DSM. And as a clinical social worker, that's the kind of work that you need to be doing for the LCSW. Now, you can have a CSW and you can work in the school district if you'd like, and you can do school counseling and all that, and that's great. But those hours may not necessarily count towards the LCSW. So yes, you can count those hours, but you want to make sure that it is actual clinical work that you're doing, that it falls within the definition of mental health therapy.
Okay. Do hours transfer between states? Or do I need to restart my licensure after gathering?
Well, it kind of depends on the state. In Utah, generally, it's pretty easy to transfer hours from another state here, so long as you held the appropriate license in the other state and you were working under supervision in that other state. Most folks don't encounter any problems transferring those hours here to Utah. I can't speak to the other states, however, because every state has their own requirements. So you would need to check with the state that you want to be licensed in.
Let's see. Do criminal records over 15 years old need to be disclosed? Misdemeanors.
No, only within 10 years.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Will the supervision requirement be required for those already qualified as supervisors or only applicable to those new supervisors?
It will be required for everybody. So even the current supervisors now will need to complete that course in 2027 if they want to continue providing supervision.
Okay. All right. Let's see. CEUs while in our MSW program, can those count toward the first year of being licensed?
They do not, I'm afraid. CUs don't officially start counting towards renewal until the CSW license is active.
Okay. With the first renewal cycle being in 2026, do we need to submit for renewal this year?
It's a good question. No, because you'll be licensed this year, you'll actually be rolled over into the 2028 cycle, and you'll need to renew at that time.
Okay. And here's a question that you responded to earlier. The deadline related to CSW hours. There is no deadline. Correct, Brian? They can practice as a CSW in perpetuity if they
Yep,
wanted to. Okay.
that's correct.
Okay. And you answered the W-2 versus 1099 worker question. Um, let's see. At what point should we begin locking down a prospective agency or supervisor? That I don't know if that's a necessarily a licensing, but
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of folks will start looking for jobs right when they get out of school, which is kind of that's up to you. That's up to your discretion. I've advised people, don't count your eggs before they hatch. You don't want to accept a job and then it turns out that there's some issue with your license. Um, but yeah, most folks, I think, start looking for that before the CSW is issued right after graduation. Our, as long as you've got the degree in place and you've submitted an application, typically doesn't take too long um, for our office to process those. But yeah, that's kind of something that you'll need to decide if there are any hangups with your license or your application. It could prevent your employment.
all right. All right. For those interested in school social work, are there any questions or things to look out for those interested in getting a license?
Other than what I mentioned, no, you just want to make very sure that the position that you're taking is a position that provides mental health therapy and the full scope of that. and isn't one of the other tiers of counseling that the schools provide. There's a lot of crossover between these services, but as I mentioned, the LCSW is a very specific specialty of clinical work, and that mental health therapy is really important. Our behavioral health board actually just had a really good conversation about this at their last meeting that kind of went over the nuances of providing a medical diagnosis and why it's so important. Because a lot of times that is the singular piece that the school district doesn't want to provide due to liability reasons. So if anyone is interested, I would recommend going and listening to their conversation. You can find the recording on our website under that board information section on the social work page. And it was just the last meeting that they had, let's see, February 5th of this month.
Okay. Let's see. I think we've answered that. There's a question about supervisors having to be an LCSW. No, they can be a licensed mental health therapist, correct? You
Yeah,
provide
any
the list.
licensed, yeah, any licensed mental health therapist, so clinical mental health counselor, a psychologist, even a psychiatric nurse practitioner could be your supervisor, as long as they're legally able to independently provide mental health services and have been licensed for at least 2 years.
All right. When the compact is in place, will we need to apply separately for that license?
Yes, it will likely be a separate license that you'll need to apply for. It'll be handled through a third party that's not the state. And they will have their own application, their own fees, and you'll maintain everything through that third party.
Okay. Here's another CEU question. Yes, CEUs cannot be accrued until after you have your CSW. So things done in schools in your master's program will not count. Let's see. Lots of out of state. Um, if we apply for CSW while out of state and need to submit a physical card or fingerprints, do we need to submit a physical mailed in application as well?
You don't. You can send those things in separately. And if they're received at different times, we will hold on to the fingerprint cards and connect them with your application when it's received. So yeah, that is something that you can do separately. You would need to have the physical cards done at like a local police department or some other provider that does them where you're at and mail them to our PO box.
Okay. How soon do supervisors need to attend the new training in order for their supervisee hours to count toward the LCSW application?
So that will need to be in place by 2027, the beginning of next year. We're hoping to get the rule finalized as soon as we can to give folks plenty of time to go get that course done. There are going to be specific timeframes to when that course can be done as well. So I would hold off on taking it until we have all of the rules in place. Um, but we understand that it's a big transition for supervisors going in next year, and we're going to work with supervisors to make sure that they all have that in place, um, which will require a little bit of grace on our end. So in 2027, we'll be reaching out to all the people who we know are supervising, requesting that they submit that training and giving them a little bit of time to get that completed.
Okay. With the delay in getting a CSW application approved, would it be better to plan my start date for work as June? Or will I be able to begin work right after graduation? I think the courtesy bridge addresses this.
Yeah, you have 60 days where you can continue working. We receive an application, as long as everything is good, it usually just takes a few days. It's a pretty fast process to get that approved.
All right. And again, that courtesy bridge, the exemption starts April 21st, or it would be the 22nd, right? It's the day after the last day of classes.
Yeah, if that's
Yeah,
the
I believe.
last day of
Yeah.
class, yeah.
Um, okay, an exam question. Um, do we need the exam prior to applying for the CSW license?
No, there's no exam required for the CSW.
Do supervisors have to be licensed in Utah?
No, not necessarily, but they do need to be licensed where they're operating.
Okay, let's toggle over here, see if there's questions in chat that we haven't addressed yet. Um, You talked about the alternative pathway. There is a question about that if students don't pass the LCSW exam. Um, so can we start working in a social worker role in April 22nd, basically? Can they, that would be when the courtesy bridge starts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Um, let's see. I think you talked about there's no cutoff for CSW hours, so you can
Yeah.
take as long as you need for the to accrue the hours, right, as a CSW. Um, let's see.
If you're doing the full 3,000 hours, you can get those done as soon as is reasonable as well. We don't have a strict time frame where like you have to, those can't be done in less than 18 months. You can get them done sooner if you're working overtime. But
Okay.
again, be prepared to be able to adequately demonstrate how that was done, if that's the case.
Okay. Yeah, that's a new. Um, let's see. Is there a fee for the fingerprinting?
It's included as part of our application for processing. I don't know if the actual um, third party has their own charge. I believe they do. I think it's usually about $10 to $20 is what you're looking at.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see. When, okay. And there's one about when can we start accepting positions? They can, they just can't start until the 22nd, correct, Brian?
Correct. Yep.
Accepting a
And
social work position. Okay.
yeah. And you can't work outside of that 60-day window if you don't have your license by then.
Okay. And what is the renewal cost for the CSW?
Right now it's $90 to
Okay.
renew.
All right. I think we managed to address all the questions. Um, let's see.
If you have any more, feel free you can call us whenever you'd like. We have a team that can answer any questions that you have, or you can send us an email. The best email is B8, just the letter B and the number 8 at utah.gov.
Okay. There's another, I've seen this question pop up a few times. Can students take the LCSW exam anytime after I become a CSW, or do they have to wait until the requirements are met?
That's a good question. I'm sorry, I should have brought that up in my presentation. You do need to complete the hours before you can sit for the clinical exam, either the 3,000 total hours or the 1,200 hours of direct therapy with the 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. Somebody is asking why the exemption period would start in May instead of the last day of classes. I
Didn't
know the
we?
history behind that one. Why wouldn't the exemption period start in May after graduation, I think is what they're sort of
Oh, I
getting at.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I believe this is because a lot of folks are doing an internship or practicum in their last term. And so we don't want to have a sort of gap there for their clients,
Yeah.
um, so that they can continue providing those services. They don't have to abandon their clients and wait for graduation in order to start working again. Is that kind of, is that what I'm getting at, Emily? Is
I
that,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
If I'm
exactly. Yeah.
understanding the question, yeah.
Because a lot of the students do have jobs lined up and they sort
Yeah,
of want to start as soon as they can, but they don't have the protections of being enrolled in the course. So,
right.
okay,
Exactly.
at the practicum course. All right, these were great questions. And what a great presentation, Brian. There's been so many changes. It's really, wonderful to have a good overview, really succinct. Thank you for delivering that and really deconstructing this for our students. And it, can we make this presentation available and or the recording, Janae and Brian?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
In case something changes, then you'll probably need a new one.
Yeah,
Because things
exactly.
things change a lot, and we're hoping that the legislature will be nice to us this year and not change anything more, because we want to get the dust settled on all these changes and make things more clear and solidified for folks, because it's been a challenging time for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, there have been a lot of changes and transitions. So, but that was great, and I can follow up with you after the session to see if there are any changes that we want to share with our students that they can expect in the coming months or years. And in the meantime, thank you very much.
Right? Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, students.